Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to the next episode of Breaking Into Breaking Bad, Season 3, Episode. Cabes, you want to do the honors?
Yeah. Yeah. So this one started off pretty good and then ended with a pretty big bang. The majority of this episode, you see Jesse doing some investigation work on his own, coming to find out that not only does he find that the two guys that were responsible for killing Combo were getting Tomas to kill Combo, uh, they're actually selling Walt and Jesse's blue meth. So Jesse finds out that they're actually employees of Gus. He gets a chance to speak with Walt and kind of plead his case that this is not right, and he was very upset, and Walt was just not buying it for whatever reason. He did not feel good about going against Gus, and he ends up letting Gus know that Jesse is unhappy, and they actually have a sit down with Gus and where they have to kind of be friends and shake hands with the two drug dealers. And also, um, Marie finally convinces Hank to leave the hospital, which was a long time coming. And also, Skyler and Walt are continuing their negotiating on the business, and Walt is trying his hardest to get back into the role of the husband and father figure at the old house. So, and at the very end, you find out that Tomas was killed by the two drug dealers after being told from Gus that they are not allowed to use children anymore. And Jesse goes to kill them, and Walt comes to the rescue, drives right over them, and shoots one of them in the head, and leaves you on a very, very big cliffhanger. So,
Yeah. Yeah, this one was really crazy. The way everything kind of culminates at the end. I didn't think Walt had that in him.
yeah, that was
That was pretty intense. You know, he didn't well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay.
get there.
The title, Half Measures. So we know that the next episode is called Full Measure. So these are related. Uh, half measures. What is a half measure? A half measure is when you're supposed to do something and you only do it part of the way, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty obvious. But what does it refer to here? I think the phrase is used when Mike tells Walt no more half measures in regard to Jesse, but it's not immediately clear what he means. Like you need to not do half measures with Jesse, you need to do full measure with Jesse. What is he implying there?
Well, he said, he used the story of the half measure on his own experiences and on how that was bad for him. And
So
when he
in that story, right, he tells the story about when he was a cop and he could have killed this guy who was beating his wife, and he gave the guy a second chance, and then the guy killed his wife, and Mike said, I would never going to do that again. So in that, okay, so if that's an analogy, what does that mean in this
well
case?
before he explained that story to Walt, he told him that he was not on board with this whole plan to get Jesse arrested, and that really he was kind of insinuating that, hey, listen, it's time to get rid of Jesse. He's a
Like
junkie.
we need to kill him.
Right. We need to fix the issue that is Jesse. And
I
so
see.
that's what he was really coming around to.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of in the middle of the episode. But the half measure title was based off of that story.
Okay, well we'll get into that, I suppose. So the introduction involves Wendy, the prostitute that we didn't expect to see again, but there she is.
Gotta love Wendy.
And you don't got to actually. Like it's an option, take it or leave it. Um, Probably
Teach
best to
their
leave
own.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the intros, I don't know, it's kind of gross. But it's just footage of Wendy working her trade, and seeing the drugs. But critically, we see that she's involved with these two gangster drug dealers who we know were responsible for Combo's death. And that's where the story with Jesse kind of kicks off because he wants to get rid of these guys and wants vengeance. Apparently, it seems, maybe we'll get into it, but vengeance for Combo. So he wants to kill these guys, and his plan is to poison them and have Wendy deliver the poison in in the food that she brings them. So anyway, that's the introduction. Wendy, the prostitute, and then as we get into the episode, it starts it starts with Walt and Skylar kind of bickering again and trying to, like you said, negotiate and figure out what it is that they're gonna do going forward.
Did you see Skylar was actually looking up how to money launder on her own computer
Yeah,
at home? Thought
yeah,
that was
amateur move there.
very amateur. And
Yeah,
for someone that has been talking a big talk about her trade and her knowledge in this type of sphere, it just shows that she obviously is very immature to be doing something like that.
yeah. Okay, so the episode really gets going, and the first scene is Walt and Walter Jr. driving, and we see that Walter Jr. is using both feet, one foot on the gas, another on the brake, which we remember before Walt was insistent, no, you can't do that. You have to do it this way. And at this point, he's changed and he says, as long as it gets you safely from point A to point B, who am I to argue? And this just seems to be a marked difference in Walt. He seemed to be a person who, no, you've got to do it this way, almost like the way he approaches chemistry, right? Where everything's got to be exact. And so I don't know if this is meant to communicate that Walt is kind of mellowing out a little bit. He's not caring so much, but they make a point to show us. And it's, when you get down to practicality like that as the guide, instead of no, you respect the chemistry, you respect the way you do it, and that's the way you got to do it. It shows a pragmatism, I guess, is what I'm saying in Walt. And there's a famous story in Chinese revolutionary history where the guy who took over after Mao Zedong, a guy named Deng Xiaoping, who was a high up ranking Communist Party guy, and he said once that it doesn't matter if a cat is black or white so long as it catches mice,
Hmm.
which is to say, it doesn't matter if it matches, if the policy we're talking about is in line with Maoist Marxism or not, so long as it works. And for that saying, Mao kicked him out and he was out of the party, and he was put back in power after Mao's death by other party cadres because they needed China to start working again. But the point is that Deng Xiaoping's turn to pragmatism away from Marxist Maoist ideology was a big deal. And I don't want to read too much into it here, but it does, the term the turn from, this is the way you have to do things to a kind of pragmatism shows that Walt might be maturing in a way. He's less insistent and he's more pragmatic. Well, I don't care the way you're supposed to do it, what actually works. And I think when we see the arc of this episode where Walt is trying to manipulate things with Gus and to help Jesse and all this, and at the end of the episode, as we already mentioned, he rams the guys with his car and shoots him in the head. Like he does what he needs to do, what's pragmatic instead of kind of how it's supposed to go about it. And we see Walt vacillating sometimes between his sort of natural tendency to approach things like a businessman and with rationality and let's weigh the pros and cons, and him just doing whatever is necessary. And I think you've said this before, this is him vacillating between Walt and Heisenberg. And so
Right.
at the end of the episode you see Heisenberg show up.
Right. So you kind of hit on it. This episode really showed the maturing of Walt and
Mm.
in analyzing situations. When he was we're kind of getting up to this part, so we can talk about it now. But when he was having his discussion with Jesse on what Jesse's plans were, and he was just his knee jerk reaction was to say no, don't do that. Like this is wrong. He found himself in situations where he had to question his morality with Heisenberg's brutality.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it Heisenberg kind of came out at the end to kind of win the day over and solidify his partnership with Jesse, because ultimately he does care about Jesse, but he was in a really tough spot, especially after having that conversation with Mike about the half measures, because he doesn't want to kill Jesse. He cares about Jesse, but he also is looking out for himself. And so the maturing aspect of this episode, for him to see all different angles and to be able to kind of help his partner out at the very bottom, was pretty awesome to see, to be honest, because you could tell he was struggling with his decisions throughout the episode. And then in the end, he finally was just like, you know what, this was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, okay, so it's a process for him to get there. And so at the one of the next scenes is Walt and Skylar talking about whether or not they're going to buy the car wash and how they're going to go about it and all this. And Walt saying, look, in order for this story to sell, I need to be able to see my son and be home, often enough that it doesn't look weird. And so then they're debating, well, I'll come home this many days a week and I'll stay for dinner. And Skylar says, no, only these number of days. And they go back and forth and they're negotiating. And something is revealed at the end of that conversation where Walt says, look, um, what are we going to tell people? And Skylar says, well, I'll just tell them that my estranged husband is just really desperate and he hopes that one day he'll be able to be reconnected. So he's constantly wanting to be around. And Walt says, well, what if he's no longer estranged? What if he's actually sleeping in his own bed again? And Skylar says, well, now you're in fantasy land. And it was really sad because it was like Walt is still, even if he and Skylar are somehow kind of business partners, they're still not going to be living like husband and wife. And it really made me question, like, what is Skylar? What does she get in all of this? What is she after? Because I think what we see is that, or what this scene reveals, is that Skylar and Walt they can work together because they can cooperate together. They can have an alliance because they have a common interest in doing something. But ultimately, they're headed in different directions. They have different ends that they're pursuing. And so for Walt, it might be care for my family and be united and at one with my family as much as I can. And all of this is, of course, a means to that. But he's ultimately frustrated because Skylar, what does Skylar want? What is the end that she's after? It's not get back with Walt because she just said, you're in fantasy land if you think I'm going to let you come and sleep in our bed again. So, I,
I
you know,
think
I,
I think it has to do what you pointed out earlier, is that Skylar has finally been able to taste the change in power, the dynamic
mhm.
there. And I think that she thinks if she allows him too many things that he wants, she's giving up that power and will be kind of put back into the situation where Walt kind of just runs everything and she's put on the back burner. So this is because like you said it, like what's the point? Why do all these things? And you've already said she's already agreed that she's incriminated enough to this point. Why not do that? Like why have you just lost all love for Walt? Is he strictly just a business partner and you're in this until Walt Jr. goes to college? Like I don't think she's thought that far, but she doesn't want to give up the power where she's at now, and she obviously feels no. Well, I don't know. I mean, every now and then you see them kind of have a little, spark, but it's
Mhm,
nothing
mhm.
too
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, the only other conclusion is that, well, she's reconciled herself to, well, I'm, like you said, incriminated, and so I have to. If I don't, I'm still guilty, or I'm still involved in this, whether I like it or not. And therefore, I might as well make the best of it and try to make as much money as possible. I think that would be a possible end for her. But she doesn't seem like the greedy, you know, money grubbing type. There is a line though where she says, I'd rather people think that I'm Bonnie, what's her name? Like Bonnie and Clyde. And
Right.
it made me think there's a part of Skylar maybe that is okay with this arrangement because she just is after some excitement.
Yeah.
And I remember from the first episode, remember how excited she would get when she would make an eBay sale? Like the excitement that she would have was way out of proportion with the amount of money that she got.
Right.
In other words, it was a bit of a game. Like it wasn't just the money that she was getting, it was a little bit of a high, a bit of a rush. And so I think when she says, I'd rather them think I'm Bonnie, what's her name? She's like, yeah, it could be kind of neat to be, you know, um, an outlaw or something. Like there's something about that that's appealing. And that to me could be the other end. And so she's not really after, you know, home, relations and having a safe and secure suburban life with husband and son and daughter. Like she's not after that anymore. She's after protecting herself and getting some excitement. But then, as you said, there are those moments when they're kind of having a family moment when Walt's holding Holly and Skylar kind of smiles, and you can tell it's sort of there in the background. So all of this tells me that Skylar's kind of conflicted. She doesn't exactly know what she's after, and that's all I know is that there's sort of multiple things going on, multiple motives, not really sure what she's doing. So they're working together, but they're not really headed towards the same ends. And I think when we try and answer the question, what are the different ends that they're after? I think we have to just sort of stay tuned and sort of see what happens.
Right.
Okay, the next scene is in the lab, and Jesse is trying to get Walt to talk with him outside of work. And he says, hey, let's, come get a beer with me. And the way he said it was so awkward and funny. It actually reminded me of that video do you remember that video that Elizabeth Warren did when she was like running for president in
Was it?
2020 or something? And she's talking to her husband and she's like,
Oh yeah.
hey, would
First,
you like a
get a beer.
would you like a beer? Like, of course it's what did Trump say? Like, it's his house. Like, or I don't know, it's really funny, but it was just about it, something about it was just really fake, and then So of course Jesse's not really interested in, just having a beer with Walt, but they're worried that the lab is bugged and that Gus can hear them, so they have to go to somewhere private to talk. And that's where Jesse tells Walt, I need you to make me some poison for me to kill these guys who killed Combo. And I'll just tell you a question that I've had throughout is why does Jesse want to kill these guys? Is it really because he's so eaten up with resentment and vengeance for Combo? Because he just never talks about Combo. Like he doesn't seem to be eaten up by Combo's death. It doesn't seem to be that close with him,
Yeah,
when he
I
was
don't think
alive.
it
So
it really had to do much with Combo, to be honest. And Walt even brought up the same question you're asking. I think he said, "Why are you just now like finding out about
yeah,
this?
that's right.
Why are you just
That's
now
right.
doing acting on this? Well, you could have acted on this like months ago. Why is it so important now?" And I think ultimately that Jesse just has a really, really big soft spot for kids. And whenever kids
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
involved in that kind of way, it just eats him up. First, with
Yeah,
we spoke about it before with the child with the ATM parents, and then with Tomas. It
right.
was just
Yeah, we've
it.
seen this before.
Yeah, yeah, he can't handle it.
Well, I thought it was interesting when Walt is trying to talk Jesse out of it. He gives him practical reasons why not to do it. You're going to get caught, you could go to prison. And it's the old Walt sort of weighing the pros and cons. And it's what you don't hear is that's murder. You shouldn't do murder. Murder is morally wrong. Don't do that. You don't hear that, right? Walt is not in that universe. He's just in his practical concerns, right?
Right.
Which is the old Walt, which is the businessman. Let's make a deal. That's how he's approaching it. Now he does say, um, he says murder is not part of your 12-step program.
He was drinking a Coke. Did you see that?
Oh, I didn't notice that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Walt was drinking the
Well,
beer, but he wasn't.
interesting. Yeah, good detail there. So, but then Walt says after that, he says, I'm not a murderer and you're not a murderer. And I'm just thinking, I don't know if that's exactly true. I
Well,
mean,
it comes down to like no. I think I even saw this on a TV show the other day. It's like no bad guy really thinks that they're the bad guy. They'll do whatever kind of rationalization they have to make it sound like their reasoning for doing A is justified. Therefore, he is not bad, and therefore, ultimately, you are not a murderer.
right. We've talked about this before when we were talking about the spectrum of vice to virtue that Aristotle talks about, and where's Walt in that? But what we noticed in that description of the person who's becoming more and more bad, right? Becoming more and more vicious. When you get the fully vicious person does evil and likes to do evil because it's evil. And if we think about the, contrasting Walt with a gangster like, Scarface or something like that, he doesn't care that he's doing murder. Like he's not trying to justify it. He's like, no, 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 that's different. Like it's totally justified. No, no, no. He doesn't care about that. He actually takes pleasure in not caring. And and so but Walt's in a kind of denial because we've seen him kill people in cold blood, whether that's Crazy Eight or killing Jane through negligence by just letting her die. I mean, Walt has, and remember, we were reminded of the scene where Walt's talking with Gus and he says, I'm not a criminal, right? No offense to those who are. But more and more and more, we see Walt committing crimes. And now at the end of this episode, we see him executing a guy with a gun in the head.
Right.
That's,
Did not even
in a
hesitate.
way, not even hesitating, right? And you could say, well, it was self-defense. No, not at that point. Jesse was safe, right? He had the gun. He could have taken them to the hospital or whatever, right? But he chose murder instead because he wanted to cover it up. Okay, Walt's plan to put Jesse in prison so that he can calm down. I I know it was funny where Walt's like, not like a prison, but like, like, and Saul's like, that's jail. Like,
Yeah.
that's just
Orange
jail.
orange
Like, you want
jumpsuits. Yeah, that's jail.
to, yeah, that's jail. Well, I was wondering as I was thinking through this, when Walt says he wants to, maybe it'd be a good idea to put Jesse in jail so he can calm down. I'm wanting to know for whose sake. Is it because Walt is nervous that Jesse might tell on, like, do something that would hurt him and his enterprise and his project with Gus? So it's for his own sake, or is he truly concerned for
Said
Jesse?
it. I think
And
he said earlier that it's for both. Well, he was concerned, and it's like, and I'm looking out for myself. He had mentioned that.
mhm,
I think that might have been when he was talking to either. It was, yeah, probably when he was talking to Saul right then.
yeah, yeah.
But the one part I
Well,
didn't get is that Jesse is technically Saul's client too. So for Saul to work this way with Walt against Jesse just didn't make sense. I know Saul is not the ethical type, but I
no, but
didn't
he's we've
think,
seen him before. Remember when he came, he said to Walt once, it might be time to deal with Pinkman, and he was considering killing him. So I think he sees Walt as his
yeah,
primary client, and he
yeah,
won't
well,
hesitate in the
yeah, his primary
partnership
client,
to.
yeah, I guess.
I don't think he would want to betray Jesse, except when not doing so would hurt Walt, his primary client.
Sure, yeah. Saul's always looking out for number one.
Yeah. Okay, so Jesse is bound and determined to go forward with this. So he orders poison on the internet, which that can't be a good idea.
Yeah,
But when he's trying to convince Wendy to deliver poisoned hamburgers to these gangsters, he tells her, "Look, you're just delivering hamburgers." And she says, "No." And think, "No, I'm just doing this one action. There's no moral component to it. I'm just delivering hamburgers. This hamburger, I'm just taking it over there." And Wendy's like, "No, I'm not. I'm complicit in murder." That's what it is.
yep,
And and so we see Jesse kind of blinding himself to that same fact when Jesse, most of the times, the guy who sees right through it and knows exactly, the moral weight of things and what's going on. When Mike comes to Walt and tells him, "I'm not going to do this," we find out that it's only then that Walt figures out that Mike doesn't primarily work for Saul,
right. That was a
that
huge
his
part because he's like the boss. He goes, "What, Saul?" He goes, "Nope, your boss,
yeah,
my
right,
boss."
the boss, yeah.
Right,
So that's a big shift in the chessboard of the game, knowing that, because Mike's Mr. Fix It. Mike's the guy you call when you're in a trouble. And and if it comes down to you're in trouble and you need something that you don't want Gus to find out about, now you can't call Mike. And that's the situation that Jesse's in.
right. Yeah, no, it. You could tell that Walt, when he figured that out, was kind of like, "How did I not put this together?" He just always assumed that he was just Saul's guy.
Right, right. Yeah, I did too. I mean, I can't blame him. It's kind of an odd guy Mike is.
Hmm.
So this is when he tells him the story about the drunk who, would beat his lady, and Mike said, I almost killed this guy, and then I didn't, and then he ended up killing his wife, and never again. And so he wants Walt to use full measure against Jesse. And I guess what he means is, hey, if you think this guy is going to kill these gangsters who work for us, you need to just kill Jesse. And what he's what he's encouraging Walt to think about is, hey, weigh the pros and cons here. You're involved in a business. You have a contract. You have a responsibility to continue to provide, the product. And in the one you're doing that, you have a duty not to kill the people who are selling this product, who work for us. And if Walt were just a businessman weighing pros and cons, he would realize the rationality of that, and he would eliminate a threat to that, namely Jesse. But at the end of the episode, of course, when Walt intervenes and kills those two guys and prevents them from killing Jesse, he's not acting in his business interest. He's not acting like a businessman. He's acting like a friend, or even maybe a father figure to Jesse.
Right. Yeah, the I think the part that really like got him to start leaning towards making that decision was when they were in the meeting with Gus and
Mhm.
Jesse stands up to Gus and he
Yeah, he
says,
does. That was
"No,
really big.
like I'm not gonna apologize. They use kids. Did you know that?"
Right.
And I couldn't really tell if Saul, I mean, if Gus knew that or if that was new information or not. But
So hard to tell.
when Jesse looks at Walt to get some support, and Walt just looks away,
Does he
you
look
know,
away?
he just he kind of just well, and then he like looks down. He didn't
Well, wait, you're sure? Because I'm trying to remember that. Because what I do remember is Gus says, "Hey, you look at me." Gus tells Jesse, like, "Hey,
that he tells
you
him to
know,
look at him when Jesse is sitting down, but when Jesse confronts Gus and stands up and says, "No, I'm not going to apologize," and then he said, "Are you seriously okay with this, Walt?" And Walt just kind of
uh-huh."
looks down
Walt
and
looks
was like,
away.
mm,
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. So there we see Jesse again claiming the moral high ground, trying to protect the innocent,
"Right,
and and Walt not being willing to do that. But I think that that comment that, do you realize that he killed, that they use kids, is revealing. He doesn't get up and say, you realize these guys killed my friend, right? He doesn't do that because we know that Gus understands from the Salamanca brothers, like blood for blood, like there's a justice that has to be meted out. But that's not what Jesse's motivation is. It's not his
right,
motive. It's protect this kid and
right."
protect other kids. So they Gus makes them shake hands and make a peace, and then we find out that Tomas is murdered or executed, actually. And then Jesse, you got to help me out here. What on earth was Jesse's plan? We know that Jesse in the past has picked up a gun to want to go and, for example, kill Tuco and had no plan, and Walt exposes that there. But here, Jesse seems overcome with rage, and he gets a gun and he drives out to the corner where he knows the gangsters are, and he's going to do what? Walk up to them and shoot them as
Yeah, just
if,
put a cap in him. That's
yeah, but I mean, is this like a Wild West thing? He's going to like draw and hope that he's faster than the two of them.
yeah.
It seems he has no plan. And then they hold their guns out. I mean, what's he going to do? I have no idea what his plan was. Was he just seeing red?
yeah, 100%. It was blind rage. He knew he needed to respond, and he was not
So
thinking
why
strategy.
doesn't he, I don't know, why doesn't he run at them or something? I
He
don't know.
just wanted
That
justice at
was,
that point. He didn't want strategy. He wanted justice, and this was the only way he thought. And Walt knew that because when Walt sees the television
mhm.
commercial or news about Tom, Tomas
Tomas,
getting
yeah.
killed, he put two and two together real quick and was like, he just got up out of dinner. He's like, I have to go because
Right.
he knows Jesse so well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think that Jesse, maybe part of his plan was to die nobly for the cause. Like he knew he wasn't going to win, I suppose. So he's just gonna go down, trying to avenge this kid's life or something. I don't know, but last minute Walt comes careening in and mows them down. And it's interesting that the way they wrote this part, they could have had it where he killed them both instantly by hitting them. He sure hit them hard enough. But they didn't. They added that Walt gets out of the car, grabs the gun, and executes the guy, which we've never seen Walt do anything like
Oh,
that.
that was intense, and you can even see it in his voice afterwards by telling Jesse just to run.
Yeah, right.
So it ended. It
Yeah,
ended
because
with
he,
a lot.
well, that leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger. Is Gus going to exact revenge? And what's he going to do? We have to find out.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. You could find these episodes on Apple Podcast and YouTube, and you could follow and also contact us on Twitter and Patreon at Breaking Into BB. We will see you next time as we break into another episode of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, the last episode in season 3 too.
That's right.
All right, here we go. Season 3, almost finale.